You know what else is crazy? Like people talk about attention spans, like, oh, this generation, their attention span is so short. But tell me why everyone is binge watching shows on Netflix. They're literally sitting in their bed all day watching the same show. That is not a lack of attention. That is not an attention span problem. It's a problem of we are trained to only pay attention to the highest quality shit.
On this episode of the Late Night Startup Show, we are speaking with Andrew Deitsch of the Andrew Deitsch podcast. If you have any interest of ever creating your own podcast, you need to listen to this whole episode. Andrew is only 24 years old, and this guy is figuring out how to make his podcast make money. He's also doing all of these side hustles that he kind of started unintentionally that are now making money, and you just have to respect it. You got to respect the hustle and how he's paying attention to even creating gifts and creating gifts a side business that directly supports his podcast. Andrew's just a great guy, very energetic, very, very good to talk to. I hope you enjoy and get some value out of this podcast. And before we get into it, I got to thank our sponsors. First, RCR Video Marketing Group, an Atlanta-based, multifaceted video production company creating compelling content to fast forward your business, and Digits in Motion. Digits in Motion is a full stack digital agency. Rob and his team are absolutely unbelievable, and they really care about the website or the app or anything in that world, in the app website world. They really care about the product that they're creating. So you need to contact Digits in Motion if you need any type of website or app developed. They're great at what they do, and they really care about the product that they're producing. So check out Digits in Motion, check out RCR Video, and now check out the next episode of the Late Night Startup Show with Andrew Deitsch. Good. Here's what I was going to do. I was going to be like, on this episode, we're talking with
Andrew Deitsch.
Just for the sake of like nailing your last name.
I love that.
Andrew Deitsch.
That's amazing.
I was like, I listened to that a million times. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I know how to say it. Then each time I start to say your last name, it's like, am I going to mess it up?
That's hilarious.
But we really appreciate you coming out, man, and being here. Your podcast is definitely expanding and growing from what I can tell from the looks of it. The Andrew Deitsch, am I saying it right?
Yes.
Deitsch? Okay, Andrew Deitsch podcast.
Yes.
How many episodes do you do usually in like a month?
So it's kind of an interesting story. So right now I've scaled it back a little bit because I've been focusing on upgrading the production quality and finishing my actual physical studio and everything, which is super exciting. So originally in the beginning, I was literally just trying to crank them out as much as possible. Actually, in July of 2017, I uploaded 20 episodes in 1 month.
Wow.
And there was a couple of days where I think I posted 2 in one day.
Yeah.
Because it was just my goal to post as many as possible just to like kind of solidify my position in the space.
Yeah.
And my main goal was really to get to 100 episodes as quickly as possible.
Wow.
So,
yeah, and you reached 100 episodes, right?
I have.
Your 100th episode with you and your brother, right?
Yeah, it was me and my brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good episode.
That's
People
awesome.
said that was their favorite one, so.
And now you're at like 104, 105 or something
I
like
think
that?
103 is the next one coming out, I'm pretty sure. So I
Okay.
don't know how delayed these will be released, but by the time you're listening to this, there'll be more than that. So
Yeah, totally.
yeah.
Yeah, because I'm kind of like stockpiling episodes right now. Just because like before I was kind of doing the same thing. I was just recording, putting out. And I found myself chasing the next episode.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I just need to do 10 to 15 episodes, get them recorded, have them on the shelf, and then like be more strategic about how I'm releasing them.
Definitely.
But before we dive into your success in the podcast realm, let's go back. I don't know if we need to go back to your childhood, but let's go back to the moment that you decided to drop out of college, right?
Ooh, yeah.
Because I think that's interesting. First of all, what were you going to college for?
So it's really interesting. So I chose mass communications as my major.
Okay.
And I never really even made it to any serious mass communications classes because I dropped out after my freshman year. But I did take one, which is more than most freshmen did because there was like a problem with scheduling, and I somehow ended up getting in one of the classes, which is cool. But mass communications is like focusing on like, advertising, marketing, stuff like that. And it's actually hilarious because my friend, I was having lunch with her and she lives in LA, and she moved out and she does something else now, but she was a mass communications major and she graduated. She was like, it's funny because like you should hire you should have some interns from Georgia College from the mass communications program, because you're doing exactly what they like need to be doing.
And this is recent, right?
This is super recent. Super recent. And we had that conversation a while ago, but until recently I finally acted on it. And I actually am now official internship provider for Georgia College's mass communications program.
Have you hired one yet?
I haven't. I've had a couple interviews. I haven't found the right person just yet.
Okay.
But
sorry to all those people that you interviewed.
It's okay. You know what? It's all good. I wish them well. And it's nothing. Hiring is always kind of a weird process because, you have an idea in your brain, and then you want to hire the perfect person. So
when you made the decision to drop out, did you know what you wanted to do, or was it more like school just isn't for me?
That's a good question. So even to even kind of go back to my childhood a little bit, like I was always a really creative person, but I always had like this idea that, I couldn't be like an artist or a creator or something like that, because I knew so many people that were better than me. And I never thought about like being a creator or being like I don't know, whatever. Like I always just viewed it as, I'm okay at sports, but there's so many kids that are better than me. I'm an okay like drawer or artist, but there's so many kids that are better than me. So like, I can't pursue that as a career, because like those kids could just do it and be way better than me. You know what I mean? That was kind of like my mentality.
Yeah.
So even in school, like I took a lot of art classes. I loved art. I loved like, creative stuff, but I don't know. I just always like pictured myself in some like day job or whatever, like in an office.
Yeah.
And then like when I got to college, I was like, what do I want to do? And I think lots of kids are faced with that question, like high schoolers. You're 17 years old and you're still asking to go to the bathroom, and then all of a sudden you're expected to know what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. Like it's kind of a preposterous idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a weird concept.
Yeah.
But anyways, the reason why I dropped out was I joined a network marketing company, kind of like an MLM. People, a lot of times associated with like pyramid schemes and stuff like that.
Multi-level marketing.
Exactly. Multi-level marketing. And I got involved with a company like that. Not to get into too much details, but it was the first time I ever like thought, and my mom actually had been involved in a similar company when I was in like middle school. And I always thought it was cool, but it was like makeup and stuff. So never really resonated with me in the way that I'm like, oh, I could do that.
Yeah.
But then when I saw this similar company and it was with products that I resonated with, I was like, oh, this is so cool. It was the first time I really like saw myself being like chasing my dreams, trying to be an entrepreneur, make my own money, blah, blah, blah. And it's super cliche. Like on Instagram, you see all the like inspirational quotes, like be a boss, just fucking do it. And like all that kind of stuff.
Hashtag hustle.
Yeah. And like Gary Vee and like, all that kind of stuff. That was my first like introduction to that world. But that was what really, I saw a different way. I saw a different path. And so I was like, I'm going to pursue this.
What year was this?
This was in 2013, because I graduated high school in 2012.
Okay.
And then I was in school the following year, and so I dropped out in 2013.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I stayed in that company for actually a couple years. I was thinking about this. A lot of people talk, in your podcast intro, in some of your other episodes, like you have the thing that's like the failures.
Yep.
And I think some people might like associate that company for me as like a failure because it didn't end up panning out and I'm not a millionaire from it and all that kind of stuff. But I learned so much from being in that company and being surrounded by other people that like were at a higher level than me and could teach me things. And I definitely wouldn't be where I am today without that.
So how did you take what you were learning in that company? Like, did you know that you were taking these little nuggets of knowledge? Or?
I think so. Yeah, okay. I definitely did. Cause public speaking, you're trying to invite people to come to these meetings. It's
sales, right?
Yeah. And it's sales, you're learning about sales, marketing. And then even towards the end, we were exploring some like kind of digital means of getting our message out there and stuff like that, and making videos and, all kinds of stuff. And obviously social media is a big part of any young person in everyone's life now, but social media became a big part of our strategy and everything. So it just, it just kind of evolved from there. And I knew that I was picking up a lot of valuable skills. And I knew I'm learning more from these people in my company that I'm learning from and stuff, and my, my mentors than I was in it's cliche again, but than I was in my college classes or whatever.
Yeah.
But, you ask any college professor, college isn't designed to make you rich. It's designed to get you your first job. And, I kind of realized that it wasn't really what I wanted to pursue anymore. And, dropped out.
So walk me through what the conversation looked like with people around you, whether it was your parents, if you had a girl at the time or whatever, of like, you know what, I'm not doing college anymore. I'm dropping out. Like, was that a tough conversation to have with those people closest to you, or was everyone supportive?
It was a tough conversation actually, because so here in Georgia we have the Hope Scholarship. So it's basically like if you have good enough grades, like you're good. Like college is paid for, your tuition is paid for. So a lot of people kind of have that mentality of like, you have hope. Like, why you have hope? You have the Hope Scholarship.
Yeah. Ironic name, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I lost hope.
Yeah,
I lost the Hope Scholarship. But I had the Hope Scholarship, and so people are kind of like, you're throwing this away. But college is also even just more expensive than that. You've got to pay for your living expenses and all that. And at the end of the day, you're not making money, you're losing money. And so that was one of the things where I said it's almost kind of like a really good coupon for something I don't want to buy. It's like if I had a 80% coupon to Victoria's Secret, like I'm not going to go cash that in unless I'm buying it for someone else, but like college, you can't buy for someone else, you're buying it for yourself. So it's like I had this coupon, like this really good coupon, but it just wasn't for the product that I wanted. You know what I mean? And so that was a really hard conversation. And I actually had this one specific night, and when it was happening, I kind of knew that it was going to be a very momentous night where I knew that if I needed to either pull an all-nighter and finish these assignments for my finals, because I had like a final project in a couple classes. I almost said a couple episodes, a couple classes. That's where my mind is. And I knew that I could either stay up and do this or get some much needed rest and fail my classes basically. And it was raining out, and it was actually it was starting to drizzle, and I wanted to go outside and get away from my roommates and stuff. And there was this like little not to get too much into the weeds on this story, but there was this little like train depot that they use for this other multi-purpose space kind of thing. I think it was a gym at the time actually, and I went in there and I just kind of like sat and thought about stuff and like started writing in a journal about like, I don't really, I think I want to pursue this other thing with this company. I don't know what I want to do. Like, and then it started like thundering, and it was almost like this epic moment when there was like thunder and lightning, and I'm like the emotional music, like I need to make a decision right now, and I made the decision. I'm like, you know what? Like if my parents are mad, if my family's mad, if my roommates are mad, like I'm going to do this. And I ended up going back in my room, going to bed, and then kind of just waking up the next morning knowing that I was going to fail my classes, lose Hope Scholarship, and I was going to have to tell my parents. And I actually waited like a while before I told my parents. So I kind of like came home and acted like business as usual for a while until I actually that night, the epic night, I wrote them a letter explaining all my feelings. I wrote down, it was like 3 pages long, and I read it to them. So that's kind of how I like broke the news. So, yeah.
That's interesting, because I feel like in a lot of the tough spots in my life, like for some reason I always just sit down and write something. Yeah. And I mean, I did that a lot in high school when I was going through some drama then, stupid drama, but also even
seems silly then.
Yeah. Right. But even stuff more recently where things were getting kind of like really deep and just in the woods and kind of shadowy and dark, you know what I mean? Like I just sat down and wrote, and whether it's for somebody or for yourself. I just think it's funny because as you were telling the story, it was almost like that wasn't even your intention to go in and write stuff down, but it just felt right.
Yeah, exactly.
Is
it
that
felt
true?
right because I wasn't going to like speak it out loud because that's weird. Like, I'm not going to like talk to myself out loud like, hey, self. So writing is like kind of that introspective, like almost talking to yourself, And I think today a lot of people associate writing with like blogging or like putting it on social media or writing a book or something, but I'm not even one to write that much now. I do a lot of like typing out thoughts and copywriting for the podcast and stuff. You got to have text associated with everything you're putting out. But there's something powerful about just kind of sitting alone with your thoughts and writing some stuff down. You never know what's going to come out. And I think some people are afraid of that. Like they're afraid to face their own thoughts and their own reality. Like they don't want to think about what their current situation actually is. They kind of just want to ignore it.
That's powerful. I think that a lot of people will hear you say that, that statement, that a lot of people are afraid to face their own thoughts. And their response would be, no, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid at all. But are they really? Like, I feel like most people are afraid to face their own thoughts, or they're afraid to open their mind a little bit to other possibilities. And
because it is kind of scary. You're challenging scary. What you believe.
It's super scary because I think the reason it's scary is because it's impossible to see the outcome. It's impossible to see how, if you open up that journal for the pun. If you open up that journal, what is it actually going to lead to in the end? You know what I mean? For you, like you came to the revelation, like, all right, I'm done with college and I'm going to do my own thing now. But for some people, I mean, I've been through times where I've opened up my own mind and wrote stuff down, and I'm like, holy shit, this is darker than even I was thinking.
Right.
But either way, it's facing those thoughts, right?
Yeah.
And making it a positive outcome regardless. Anyway, let's get from 2013 when you decided to drop out of college to the start of your podcast in 2017, May 2017, right?
Yes.
Because obviously there's a big gap there, and
Definitely.
I feel like everyone knows you for the podcast now. Like that's your thing, that's what you do, and all that. So walk me through 2013 to 2017 start of the podcast.
Yeah, that's a good story. So a lot of it was still staying involved with that company. Made a ton of great friends in that company, and actually, like again, I wouldn't be where I am without that company. And I moved out to Kennesaw, where I lived with one of my buddies. That was one of my basically business partners in this company. We ran events out of that house.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It was actually really cool. It's one of the few times where I felt like I was like part of a movement. Like felt like I was doing shit, like there was stuff going on, and I felt like, all my friends back at college, they don't know what's going on. Like we've got something cool going on here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we kind of felt this like energy, and it was really cool. And eventually, that company before it ended up kind of going under a little bit, we had switched to another company, and that was very short lived. And then we all kind of just realized that the new company didn't have that same energy and spark, and we all kind of dispersed a little bit. And actually, this is what leads into my traveling. So traveling plays like a huge role in kind of my mindset and where I am today too.
Yeah.
So what happened was I was living in Kennesaw, and my friend Brooke, she was messaging me about how she was doing this thing called being an au pair. And an au pair is basically like a nanny that typically is from a different country and is going to like teach your kids a different language.
My wife's sister did that actually in Germany. Yeah.
Yeah. So au pairs it's like a really cool opportunity because you get to live with a host family and all this stuff, and you get to hang out with kids and blah, blah, blah. So my friend Brooke was doing this, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And I was texting her back and forth, and she was in Italy, and I'm like, oh man, like I've never gone over to Europe or anything. Like the farthest I'd ever gone was like Mexico for a cruise. So it's not really real. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Like I wish I could do that. I literally said that. I was like, I wish I could do that. And she goes, you can. And I'm like, I can't do that. That's a girl job. And she's like, no, I've actually met like 4 or 5 like guy au pairs over here, and they like live with a family that have like sons.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, really? So I started exploring it a little bit more. And, I'd worked at summer camps for a while, and I'd done babysitting when I was younger and stuff. So I was good with kids. I was familiar with kids, and I like, a new challenge. I definitely wasn't fluent in any other languages, but actually a lot of au pair host families they actually prefer you to only speak the one language. They only want you to speak English.
Yeah.
So anyways, long story short, I found a family in Italy, and that summer I ended up breaking my lease with my friends in Kennesaw, and went to Italy for the summer. And it was like one of the most amazing experiences of my life.
Yeah.
And during that time, I actually was exposed to tons of podcasts because when I was traveling and, I'm on a plane for hours and hours, and I'm, hopping around, I ended up, visiting a lot of other countries while I was there. And, kind of when you're on your downtime, you want to hear a familiar voice, and so podcasts became this like awesome resource for me, not only so I could learn, but also just like fill the time when I was, flying or, whatever.
And what year is this?
So I guess this was 2014 or 15, I'm thinking. So a couple of years after. And so, I think there was the summer of 2015 was that. So and then actually I ended up doing it again the following summer with a different family in Spain. So that was really cool too. And just traveling ended up playing like a huge role in me just kind of discovering myself, because when you're in a different country where nobody, you're not going to walk along the street and recognize anybody, Yeah. Like it's kind of a weird thing that you don't even realize subconsciously when you're just like driving around town. You're kind of like looking at people's faces thinking like, do I know that person? Do I know that person? Do I want to know that person? Like you're constantly having this interface with everyone else's face, and you're trying to like cross-reference if you know anybody.
Yeah.
And after a few months overseas, when you're like, I don't know anybody, I've looked at a million faces and I haven't recognized a single one, your brain almost like kind of turns off that like you're not even like thinking about, do I know this person? You're just kind of like soaking it all in.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're a kid again because everything is new. Everything's a new experience. Even going to the grocery store is an adventure because you don't know they're going to have the thing you want.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to read the packaging. You're going to have to ask somebody and it's going to be really intimidating because you don't know if they're going to be able to speak English back to you.
Yeah.
You know, all that kind of stuff. And it really like tore down all these like mental barriers in my mind of all of the ideas that I had in the past about how life worked and what was normal and what was acceptable and all that kind of stuff. It was really interesting.
It sounds like to me, up until this point in our conversation, that every decision that you've made, that we've talked about, has been somewhat against the grain or intimidating or easy for anyone to be afraid of.
Yeah.
Dropping out of college.
Yeah, that was
it's a big decision. Deciding to kind of break the stereotype of being, I guess, a nanny, right? That's kind of a way to say it.
I always called it a bro pair.
Yeah.
A no pair, a bro pair.
I love it. But I think most important is let's clarify that you were traveling alone. You know, like if you were traveling with a friend,
is totally different.
It's totally different because you have that crutch to lean on versus if, you know, you're traveling by yourself. So you had to kind of explore yourself a little bit.
You really do
during the process. So how important is it for someone to try that? I mean, personally, I don't think I've ever traveled outside of the country alone. And most of my travel was for work. So I have like the shot list, the video production. I know exactly what I'm there for. It's like, I don't care if the grocery store doesn't have my stuff. So like talking to me, someone who has never traveled alone outside of the country, sell me on it.
So for me, traveling alone, like I was living with this host family. So even though I'd never met them before, we Skyped beforehand. Like, you know, I got to know them a little bit. I was fairly I wasn't scared of the idea of living with this family. The thing that was like intimidating was, you know, making sure I get to the right places and like, you know, what if someone steals my luggage and my phone and I'm just stranded or something like that. But I think I tend to look at life through rose-colored glasses. You know, like I tend to be an optimist about most things. And if you really think about the statistics of like crime and, you know, all the bad stuff that happens, it's pretty far and few between that something really bad is going to happen to you. You know what I mean? Like we all lead like pretty comfortable lives and we're all scared of like the other, right? We're scared of going to another country because what if you get kidnapped, like the movie Taken or something like that? It's like, but you also have to realize that there's, you know, when you think of something bad, like, for example, you think about a couple of days ago, there was like a bomb supposedly at the CNN building here in Atlanta. Someone from out of town, they message you and they're like, "Are you okay? I heard there was like a bomb in Atlanta." You're like, "Nah, that was like miles away from me." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you hear about like, "Oh, there was like a van that ran through a crowd of people in France." You're thinking like France is just like a place, right? But France is like a giant country. Like, you know, even though, yes, it was a terrible thing that happened. And yes, it, you know, it potentially could happen anywhere.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I think that, you know, letting those negative thoughts consume your decisions is letting bad people win, kind of, you know what I mean? And not to make it all about terrorism, but you know, anything can happen when you're traveling. Bad stuff in general. You could get hurt, you could get sick, and then what's going to happen then? So I think really for me at the time, you know, I felt like I was single. I didn't have any kids. I didn't have any sort of, you know, I just kind of gotten off of this crazy roller coaster of MLM stuff. And I was kind of like in between things. And I was just like, this seems like the only opportunity, only time I'm going to be able to do something like this in my whole life.
Yeah.
So I should just take it. And again, like to sell you on the solo traveling, again, like, you know, you really discover yourself, and that sounds kind of cliche, sounds kind of cheesy, but the way that you do that is you have to think about like, there's no expectations of you. No one knows who you are, who you have been in the past. No one's going to judge you for anything that you've done. So like, who do you want to be right now? Who are you right now? Are you the expectations of your friends? Are you the expectations of your parents? Because they're not here. They're not going to know what you're doing unless you post about it on social media or something. Like no one back home is going to know anything you're doing right now. So who are you right now? And like, that's, you know, that's kind of priceless.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah. That's great, man. I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of very successful people. One of the guys is worth about $6 billion. He has
chump change.
Yeah. Right. He has a family, kids, wife, you know, all that good stuff. And every year he takes a 2-week trip by himself. This most recent year, he went to Japan, all by himself. And
that's awesome.
Some of the executives that work with him and underneath him they now have picking up that same idea.
Yeah.
And even with a wife and kids and all that, they take at least a weekend to, even if it's just to the North Georgia mountains or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But most of these guys are going like out of the country because they have the money. Like it's not that big of a expense for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was talking to them about it, and they were like, even if you just get away for a couple of days, turn off, don't really communicate with anybody, and just let your own thoughts kind of dictate where you go and dive into that. So I think it's interesting that you're saying it from the perspective of, I'm young, I really had no responsibilities to a wife or kid or anything. So like, I didn't want to miss the opportunity. But at the same time, I've experienced the people that
they still
are
do it.
old, married, have several kids, several grandkids and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And the last guy, he traveled right after, I think he left after Christmas. And then it was gone for New Year's Eve and New Year's Day and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like even during the holidays, he was like, I'm going to go.
Hey, if you've got the blessing from the wife, then I don't see why you wouldn't be able to do it. You know what I mean? And that's the thing is, I do think it's super important because kind of go back to what you were talking about journaling. Like people don't tend to want to be introspective. They don't want to be honest with like where they really are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They have all these, especially you hear about it, especially kind of like in the Hollywood world where everyone's talking about all these projects they got going on and everything that I got a whole bunch of irons in the fire. Oh, I got this, I got that, I got this, I got that. Same thing happens with parents. They always are bragging about their kids. And that was a hard thing for my parents, especially I know for my dad, like having to face his friends and tell his friends that his son's a college dropout. Like that's not fun. That's not cool. Like, how does that make him feel? That sucks. I don't want that, but I'm not going to let that dictate my happiness. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's like, even if you have those thoughts are being driven by other people. Like you're just the back seat of that vehicle.
Yeah.
Like you said, like your dad having those thoughts of, oh, my son's a college dropout. That the fear of that thought is coming from the fear of what other people will think. Right. Like, and
it totally is.
Yeah. And that's huge in people's mindsets. And like you said, people in the video world, people always feel like they got to be busy or like, oh yeah, we can have a ton of stuff, in pre-production. We're, we're busy. We're doing this. We're about to start production on this. I have this great script idea. Everyone always has the next project or the next thing lined up. And I've said this a couple of times now. In the last like 3 months, I unintentionally took a long break.
Yeah.
Just moving into here in this space and all that. Everyone's kind of heard the story, so I won't go into it. But it was like the first time in my entrepreneurship career and life that when people asked me, well, what do you got going on? I was perfectly comfortable in saying like, I haven't done shit. Like, and it felt so good.
Right.
Like to be able to say that and not care how I would be looked at, if I would be looked at as an entrepreneur failure, or I wasn't busy enough, or, like all these thoughts of what people were going to take of that statement. I kind of was able to forget about all of those thoughts and just say, yeah, I haven't been doing anything. I've been kind of on a break and it's been nice.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, you can ask Ray, my business partner. Now I'm like back on it. I'm editing, I'm listening, I'm cutting out micro content. I'm constantly reaching out to new people to put on the podcast. And we really do have a couple of projects coming up that are pretty big for us. So, but I guess all that to say, don't be fake, or don't let the other people's, what you think they're going to say about you dictate your action.
Yeah. This is a big concept that I've been thinking about a lot. And I don't know if I want to make like a video about it or something like that, but it's this idea of asking for permission. Like people always want to ask for permission to do stuff that it's out of their comfort zone, but they also have all these expectations of things they have to be doing that they don't need to be doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like, everyone's doing this like weird dance of like, this is what's expected of me. This is what my parents want from me. This is what my peers want from me. This is what my boss wants of me. And then what do I actually want? And then let's say you want to start a podcast or something. What qualifies you to start a podcast?
Yeah.
Who's going to give you permission to start a podcast? Nobody. That's why you got to like go do it. And to kind of go back to my story a little bit of how I got started with the podcast, like I was listening to all these podcasts while I was traveling.
Yeah.
And I thought like, I have all these interesting friends, like a lot of the friends that I met in that MLM company that ended up going on to do awesome stuff, because the same thing happened with me, where they were so inspired and so motivated by working with such a great group of people that they ended up taking those skills and doing something else. And that's what I realized, like, wow, I have this network of like all these really cool people that are really doing stuff. You know what I mean? And I felt like a lot of my peers from college or whatever, like maybe didn't have that. And I felt like that was something unique that it's kind of hard to like showcase without doing some sort of show or, podcast or something like that. And I originally was like, it's intimidating. So I wanted to have like a co-host. And then I recorded one podcast with my buddy Owen, which is hilarious because he's launching his podcast in a little bit. But
nice.
We did it on like a phone, and we were just chatting, and it was like 20 minutes long, and I wasn't really happy with it, and he wasn't really happy with it. And so we kind of just like never spoke of it again. We're like, this isn't working. And then it wasn't until like a year later that my buddy Graham asked me to be a guest on his podcast. And once I saw like how accessible it was and like what gives Graham the qualification type of podcast, I'm like, well, hell, like I love podcasts. I know what I like in a podcast. I love listening to podcasts. I have tons of interesting friends. I'm going to start a podcast. And that's exactly what I did.
And that was May 2017.
Yeah, it was like I guess it was March was when he asked me to be on the podcast, my buddy Graham. And then like late March, early April, bought a simple little Tascam DR40, just a little recording unit with 2 XLR inputs on the bottom to plug in some external mics. And I had a super portable setup, and I just went to town, and I launched at the end of May. So it was like during April and May, I was like starting it, building the website, getting my guests, recording, figuring out what I was doing, and making all the graphics and stuff like that. It was all a one-man show. So
did you have any experience in like the audio equipment or like the website building world or any of that?
Like a little bit, just from like dicking around, I'd made YouTube videos in the past. I always had like a cracked version of Photoshop on my computer when I was younger. I was always trying to make funny stuff on there. In high school, actually, it's funny. Now I feel very confident working in Photoshop or even now Premiere and like in an Audition as well, like these Adobe, like very powerful, like industry standard programs for like editing, like really powerful content. And I remember in high school, I took like a digital art class and we learned Photoshop, and I'd already played around a little bit with it. So I was like a little more familiar. So I felt like I was like already kind of had my foot in the door with that. So the teacher kind of gave me special attention and gave me like a couple of different projects because I was a little bit more advanced. I felt so awesome. But it's funny because that's the only formal like Photoshop class I've ever taken. And I use it like every single day in my business to create graphics and like all kinds of stuff, and to even to, whatever. But it's just funny. Like I always, again, like I kind of came from that creative background, but never like asserted it towards one single goal. Like I'm going to be a painter, or I'm going to be a digital artist, or I'm going to be it was more just me like having fun creatively and using it as like a medium to make my friends laugh or something. Like, oh, I'm going to Photoshop me into this other background or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's just, and I think people want to know how to use programs like that, but they just don't want to spend the time that it takes to like learn these like heavy programs.
Yeah. Or like you said, they have the mindset of, the person next to me is better than me, so why even try? Like, and that's another powerful statement that you said earlier, is like, it's easy to be like, oh, this guy's better than me. Like, I will openly say there's plenty of video production companies in Atlanta that are doing bigger stuff and stuff. I don't want to say better, because I feel like that's
different and different scales too.
Exactly.
That's what I've realized, like going into video a little bit too. Like I realized that video content is so big right now on social media, and there's definitely no shortage of need. Like every business needs video content.
Yep.
And even though there's tons of companies out there doing awesome videos, there's still more client demand than there is companies that can fulfill those needs. Yeah. And like, for example, you guys have these, epic setups and stuff. Some small businesses might need a $50 video or a $100 video. And some people are like, oh, you're devaluing the industry or whatever. But if you're a 18-year-old kid with a phone and know how to like edit a quick video and make $50 real fast, like sure, help your mom's company or whatever, or help your friend's dad's company make this quick video. Might not be the best thing ever, but you're at least like getting started, getting your toe in the water, and making a quick buck, hustling.
I will admit that I was one of the guys that would say, oh, these guys with these little DSLRs and stuff are charging $400 for a video or devaluing their real production companies. But eventually I was like, I kind of like it because it's exposing the industry as it is, meaning there's so many middlemen in this industry that these big companies, I don't want to mention any companies.
That's true.
But these big companies would go through an agency and pay a shit ton of money towards the agency.
So true, man.
The agency would hire a video production company and all that. And then they would pay the TV rates, to get an ad on TV. And now it's like, wait a minute. We don't need to be spending $2 million on one ad. We can spend $2 million in marketing, in video marketing, and get 400, 500 videos. All from so we have one big client that works in any given month with about 12 different production companies. Wow. So yeah, there is no shortage of the video need. And there's constantly going to be a need because things are constantly updating.
And there's also one thing that kind of is interesting from my perspective, and one thing that I kind of have started branching off into recently is animation a little bit. I started making animated GIFs because I was like, I wanted to make GIFs for the podcast.
GIFs are
and
all
stuff.
over the place, like your face on all your Instagram stories and all that stuff.
Dude,
that's so
literally,
funny.
So combined of all the ones of just my face, I'm pretty sure they've been viewed like 30 million times.
Wow, that's awesome.
Which is crazy, right? Like there's like a fashion designer named Philly Patek or something like that. Has like a couple million followers. They used one of my GIFs on their story the other day.
Great.
Like people are constantly texting me every single day. Like, yo, I just saw your face on this post. Yo, I just saw your face here. Yeah. And it's crazy because, I've it's been kind of this snowball effect, and now I'm kind of rolling it into something a lot bigger, and it's pretty exciting. But to go along with your thing about the middleman, I had a client recently that he runs kind of like an agency, and he had a client that wanted GIFs. And so he like contracted me through him. And then I made a new Instagram like recently that was just for my GIFs to like promote, like, I make custom GIFs. If you need custom GIFs, let me know. And I posted this new sticker set. So it's like GIF stickers. I was like, oh, I just posted this new sticker set for X company. Yeah. And he messaged me. He's like, can you not tag them? Cause like I told them that I made the GIFs because he was like the middleman. Yeah. And I was like, no, like I'm going to keep him up there because I made him. Like it was just kind of hilarious because, and not to say that he wasn't valuable as the middleman. He brought me the lead, all that stuff. He got his cut. But at the end of the day, it's like, don't be pretending like you're the, you should be transparent about that. I'm going to subcontract my GIF guy or just say my GIF guy instead of like, and that just happened today. And not to shit on the guy, the middleman guy is like my friend, Yeah. But it was just funny. He's like, hey, can you take it down? Cause like, they don't know that you made them. Like they think I made them. And I'm like,
that's crazy.
No.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say that because it's like the same thing in the agency world is I've run into problems with agencies that I'll put like a clip of a video that I shot through the agency in my demo reel. And they're like, no, can you take that down? That I'm like, I literally did every single last bit of the work, and you were there just to facilitate communication between the company and the video production company, which was me. I did all the work, so I want to put this one shot. But we have lots of legal.
When there's like I would be happy to sign a contract and be paid a little bit more to say, yeah, sure, this is now your property. Yeah. But you know what? At the end of the day, it was uploaded on my Giphy channel, so if people go back to it, they're gonna see my name all over it. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of funny, like. And again, not to shit on this guy, because again, it was just like a small little thing, but it's just kind of one of those things that I think are shifting a little bit. Like you said, kind of like the agency world that, it's kind of exposing, what is a song worth? Is a song worth 99 cents, or is it worth like, I want to be able to stream songs whenever I want on Spotify? You know what I mean? Like when there is this, when everything becomes more accessible, before cameras were super expensive, they still are super expensive. But when everyone has a camera on their phone, everyone thinks they're a videographer all of a sudden. You know what I mean? Yep. Everyone thinks, why am I going to pay $1,000 for a photo shoot when I could take some pictures on my phone? Yeah. Or I could pay my son to do it. He has a good camera. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's like people's mentality. And I have to say, like, I'm guilty of that too sometimes. Like I'm always the do-it-yourself guy. Like, oh, I need graphics for my podcast. I'm going to figure it out. Oh, I need videos for my podcast. I'm going to figure it out. You know what I mean?
But like you said, if people are saying, why would I pay $1,000 or $2,000 for a video when I can pay this guy X amount of dollars? I think it all comes down to being incredibly self-aware. And the only way that you can get ahead and break out of, the mediocrity and like this industry that is being, I don't want to say held back by these people that are only charging, a few $100s for a video, but you don't want to stay that guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Eventually,
if you're going to graduate,
you're going to grow to the point to where you don't walk out of the house for less than $5,000.
Yeah. You don't want to make a career on Fiverr. Like you want to graduate.
Exactly. And a lot of people make careers on Fiverr. So, but good on them. You know what I mean? Like that's good. But I just feel like the way the gear and what you're shooting with and the next drone that you bought, or even like us having the studio space, really doesn't mean anything if we're not self-aware enough to realize how we need to grow.
Totally.
And then that transfers over to growing the company.
Yeah.
But it's growing as an individual. But so you said
everyone's got to start somewhere though.
Exactly. Yeah. So speaking of starting somewhere, was this whole GIF thing like it sounds like you were just doing it for like fun?
I'm always trying to explore new ways of like getting my message out there, like for example, but
not necessarily new ways of making money. Right?
Yeah, no, it didn't turn into I wasn't thinking about getting paid to make GIFs. Like, but one thing again, like with my background in like making stuff in Photoshop, I knew how to like create graphics. And then if I'm combining that into like a video editing platform sort of, and like I can make like a transparent file and make it kind of move around. I'm like, oh, I'm kind of like animating stuff a little bit. Yeah. And it, I'm not Pixar or anything, but I'm not creating like 3D crazy, models or anything, but I'm able to like make this little animation. And one thing that I was like thinking about was I was on, so hopefully everyone on here is familiar with Instagram stories. And on Instagram stories, you can add GIFs, these little animated stickers to your posts. And I'm like, how do you get on there? Because you can.
Yeah, aren't they like preloaded or something?
So basically, like when you load up GIFs, like so basically, if you actually look at the top, when you load up that page, it says powered by Giphy or search Giphy or something like that. Okay. And Giphy is a company that is a GIF hosting website essentially. And they're probably they probably are the biggest website that hosts GIFs.
Oh yeah.
And so basically
search Giphy. Okay. Yeah,
exactly. And so in early 2017, or maybe it was, I don't know, somewhat recently, I think it was early this year actually, they partnered with Snapchat and Instagram to be the official GIF like provider for these Instagram stories and Snapchat stories. So you could put these little animated things on there.
You're all over the place.
Yeah. You just type my name, you type in Andrew, you type in podcast, I come up like, and
that's
so
awesome.
So it's almost kind of like, GIFs, when you think of traditional GIF, it's like a square moving image that you can
make
post.
It awkward. Keep talking though.
What up? So it's like a square moving image, but GIF stickers are like cutouts that you can end up. So there's like a transparency around the outside of the image.
Okay.
So that you can like effectively stick it onto something. Think of like a die cut sticker versus like a square sticker.
Gotcha.
So if you just have like a square sticker with your face on it, it's not going to look as good if you had like a die cut sticker with your face on it. So these GIF stickers, people weren't making these transparent stickers until somewhat recently because there was no use for them until Instagram and Snapchat were like, oh, we want to partner with Giphy to use these GIF stickers that they had. And so there's just not that many GIF stickers out there in comparison to like how many, if you go on Facebook and search the GIF search, there's literally like millions and millions and millions. And you search the Instagram and Snapchat GIF search, there's just not that many. Like for example, you search a keyword like wheelchair, there's one GIF with a person in a wheelchair. So there's obviously a shortage of wheelchair GIFs. For example, if you search the term podcast, now there's way more than even in just the past couple months, but there was like a few, and like Gary Vee was like one of the main guys. And of course he's got the budget to make that kind of stuff, right?
GIFs all over the place.
But the crazy thing that I didn't realize was how many eyeballs were in this GIF search bar. Cause everyone's putting GIFs on their stories, but they're not thinking about who's making them or where they're coming from. You just think, like you even said, like, aren't they just like preloaded? Like, where they come from? But there's actually people out there that are like GIF artists that upload to Giphy and stuff. And so think about how big of a platform Instagram is. Yeah. There's literally, I think there's like 1 billion people on Instagram.
Yeah. I'm super fascinated by this.
It is actually really fascinating. So like if you create something that's really relatable, like a reaction GIF of my face laughing, people search in LOL and they pick my face because they think it looks the best, and it ends up getting seen by millions of people. Does that benefit me monetarily? Not necessarily, but it gives me crazy brand awareness and reach. And people also think like, I know these people. Like, how'd you get this? How'd you get shithead Steve, who has 1.5 million followers on Instagram, to use your GIF? I'm like, I didn't get him to use my GIF, but I just created a really good GIF that was compelling enough for him to use it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so like a lot of brands are like contacting me. They want to make GIFs of their logos and stuff like that, which is really cool because you can use it on your own platforms as well.
But other people aren't going to use that shit.
But other people probably aren't going to use it. I think that having a mixture is good.
Yeah.
Because if you
have
a mixture,
like if I type in just Andrew.
Yeah.
you have like maybe 2 or 3 that have the Andrew Deitsch podcast on it.
Exactly.
But most of it is just your face or doing something funny and all that. So it's not like you're doing it to try to market or like put your podcast name out there.
Exactly. But subconsciously kind of is.
It is long term, right?
Exactly.
It's not like you're trying to get...
It's reach.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so people eventually will be like, where do I know that guy from? Oh, wait, he's on... Like, he has a GIF? Who is this guy?
Yeah.
Like, people just get that mentality. And same kind of thing with the podcast. Like, you know, you meet somebody and you tell them, like, what's your Instagram? And you're like, oh, it's AD Podcast or whatever. Casual. And then people are like, you have a podcast? Oh, what the heck? You know what I mean? And so it's not, I didn't do this just to create this like social clout or whatever and make myself seem cooler than I really am.
You did.
I did. Yeah, I did. No, but you know what I mean? It really does. Like, you do these like kind of weird things that not everyone else is doing, especially, you know, a lot of kids my age, you know, I still say kid, I'm 24, you know, not super old, not super young though. And I think a lot of kids in that space, like they're thinking to be on Giphy, you've got to be like Gary Vaynerchuk or, you know, to have a podcast, you got to be making this much money, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, you don't have to ask permission, man. Like, you can do whatever you want to do.
Just do it. Yeah. Which goes back to kind of how I like
figure it out,
how I asked. Well, I was going to ask, like, how did you go from like, I'm just going to make a GIF of my face because I think it would be cool or like interesting to like someone hit you up like, hey, can I commission you essentially to produce these for me? And I don't, is that the only time that you've ever kind of been paid to do one, or?
It was the first time I got paid to do GIFs, but it was like it wasn't the first time I gotten paid to do stuff. So like recently this year I quit my job, and it was because I was making money like doing all kinds of creative stuff for the first time, which was dope because people saw what I created with my podcast, and it was a one-man show kind of thing. It was literally just me and some microphones talking to people, but they saw all the like mini content that I was creating around it, and they loved what I was doing. And they're like, yo, I want you to make that for me. Like, and I'm kind of sitting there like, I don't even know how much that I should charge. And I'm kind of like, again, you know, kind of like what we were talking about, kids charging like $50 or $100, $200 for a video. Yeah. They didn't know what they had. And I was in that same boat too. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, sure. I'll do it for $100. You know what I mean? And I didn't, because also I was kind of getting paid to learn at that point. I still didn't know everything. Yeah. But so I started taking on some clients, just making some like, you know, Instagram ads or making a short little video or whatever. Yeah. And one thing that kind of took off was like actually editing Instagram stories, like making a vertical video. You know, it's kind of like a cardinal sin to make vertical videos. Yeah. I'm sure, you know, being a video guy, it's like
there's so many people that can't stand it in my industry, and I'm all about it. Embrace it.
I think it's all about context, right? So everyone's holding their phone vertically. If you're making a horizontal video, you're taking up a small percentage of their screen, versus if you're making a video for Instagram and you know it's gonna live on Instagram, like you can't do you can't do horizontal video on Instagram. So like if it's literally the video is for Instagram and it's gonna go on your stories, and you know that for a fact, and that's the main place you want people to see it, like shoot it in portrait or, you know, edit it specifically for that.
There's so many people that I know in my industry that refuse to do vertical video. And sometimes in their Instagram stories, they even do their pictures horizontal. And as soon as I see that, if I'm scrolling through stories, like, I just skip. Like I swipe right to the next person.
That is like a person that is, you know, nostalgic about what they've always done.
They're prideful.
Yeah. And, you know, people, you know, back in the day when the only place you could look at stuff on the internet was on a computer screen. Yeah, of course. Do it in horizontal, because that's how you're going to see it. You got two eyes. They're oriented in horizontal. You know, it makes sense. But when everyone's holding their phone vertical and everyone's just scrolling, your content's got to stand out. How's it going to stand out? If it's bigger, you've already got a leg up on everybody. You know?
Yeah. That's like I said, it's pride. They're so prideful about their art and creativity and all this stuff. I'm like, you're not Christopher Nolan.
No.
Like if it's Christopher Nolan doing a horizontal story, I may actually hang on it and watch it. But if it's just Joe Schmo, the video guy, I don't care.
Yeah, and people even have the nerve to like on their IGTV stories be like, rotate left or whatever. It's like, I know what to do. I know that it's sideways.
Like this whole device is based around convenience.
Yeah.
And you're not going to inconvenience me. Yeah. Like I'm not going to turn my phone.
The other thing is most people are like casually consuming content. You know what I mean? They're not like, if you're on Instagram watching videos, like, you know, a lot of people even me, I'm guilty of this, like uploading like a couple minute long stuff on there on IGTV or whatever. It's like people really aren't using the platform for that right now. Like if I'm going to sit down and watch a video,
IGTV.
Yeah, you know, if I'm going to sit down and watch a video, I'm going to open up YouTube.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to go straight to IGTV to watch stuff. Like, you know, if I'm, you know, eating a meal or whatever, and I want to watch some quick, you know, content from one of my favorite creators, I'm not going to Instagram. Instagram is where I'm getting that quick bite-sized stuff. Like I'm scrolling, and it's kind of like that, kind of like a news feed. Like I'm checking the pulse of what's going on. I'm not trying to sit down and consume this massive video. You know, and even a minute on Instagram is massive. You know what I mean? No one's stopping for a minute. Like, you know, it's just how it is. People talk about attention spans. This is one thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently, because right now we're doing a podcast. This is a long podcast. You know, podcasts are long. Some of my podcasts have gone over 3 hours. Like that's pretty nuts. But, and like Joe Rogan just did a podcast a couple of days ago. There's 4 hours and 20 minutes. 420.
And it was a Sober October podcast.
Sober October,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sober October recap. I feel like that's on purpose. Like we're going to make this Sober October podcast go 4 hours and 20 minutes.
I think so too. But the thing is, and you know, like he did the podcast with Elon Musk. That was a big moment in podcasting this year. Like tons of people sat down and listened to that whole thing. Yeah. You know what else is crazy? Like people talk about attention spans. Like, oh, this generation, their attention span is so short. But tell me why everyone is binge watching shows on Netflix. They're literally sitting in their bed all day watching the same show. That is not a lack of attention. That is not an attention span problem. It's a problem of we are trained to only pay attention to the highest quality shit. We want to buy the best shit on Amazon. I'm checking all the reviews. I want to buy the best tripod. I want to buy the best camera. I'm checking all the reviews. I want to buy the best microphone mount. I want to be drinking the best coffee, be wearing the best clothes. I want to buy the
best dog bowl.
Exactly. Like I want it to be optimized.
No, I'm not.
Wow, this dog bowl is so intuitive for my dog. He knows exactly where to drink from. You know? And so people have this idea that they want to consume the best of the best. And so like, for example, Netflix creates amazing shows that are super compelling. You know, Joe Rogan, again, he talked to Elon Musk. I could listen to Elon Musk talk for 10 hours. And so people think like, oh, well, no one's going to listen to my podcast because I'm just talking to nobody. If your opinions are important and your opinions are valuable and people like you and, you know, whatever, then who's to say that, you know, that it's not interesting or it's not great? The problem is there is such thing as bad content or boring content. Like it's just a matter of fact, you know, and there's also a matter of context, you know. I like to listen to podcasts to, you know, hear a different point of view, hear a different perspective, hear someone else's opinion, maybe learn something. I'm not going on a podcast to try to like learn like a specific skill or something. I'm going to read a blog post or watch a YouTube video. So I think that's the biggest thing is people got to think about is like the context of where they're putting stuff. And then also, you know, that attention span thing, maybe on Instagram, it's not the best place to post an hour-long video. But if you post a movie on Netflix, like people are going to watch it. Because they have that mind space of, I'm going to sit down and watch this. And so like, you know, I don't know where I was going with that, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get it. It's like on Instagram, the long form videos, people just automatically kind of assume that this is going to be a lower quality long form video. Versus Netflix is like, it's going to be quality stuff. So it's almost like this assumption about the quality of it, and it's not an attention span issue.
The other thing, sorry to interrupt you, but the other thing that I do like about Instagram TV is that it has created, so I don't know if you know this, but on stories, you can link your story to your IGTV video. So
is that just through swipe up or is that?
It's through swipe up.
Okay.
And so you don't have to have, so normally on Instagram, you have to have 10,000 followers
that was my next question.
Swipe up to exit to another URL because they don't want people leaving the app. They want people to stay inside their ecosystem. But if you're leaving the story to go to another video inside of Instagram, they're like, sweet, we want people to go to IGTV.
Interesting. I did not know that.
I actually like that. So instead of uploading like 7 stories of the same thing, I'm going to almost upload a quote unquote 15-second trailer to my story and then say swipe up to watch the whole thing and post the full thing on my IGTV. So I'm not cluttering my stories up.
How long can the full thing be? Is there
on
still,
IGTV?
Yeah, is there still a time limit?
If you have a certain amount of followers, you can upload to an hour, I think. But if you are under that like 10K, I think it's like 10 minutes.
Okay, gotcha.
But it's still decently long. Like I'm still not watching a 10-minute IGTV video. Like let's just be real, you know? But you could post like a couple minute long podcast clip or, you know, whatever, something like that.
Yeah. Well, it's like even with the Joe Rogan podcast, sometimes I'm just listening to it in my car. And then there's other times where I will pull up the YouTube video of it. Like with Elon Musk, I did. Cause I was like,
me too.
Man, I just want to see this guy. I want to see him think.
I want to see him smoke the blunt.
Yeah, exactly.
Did he really
He's
inhale?
like, it's legal, right? I love how Joe Rogan was like, well, you probably can't do this because of stockholders and stuff. He's like, it's legal. Yeah, I'll inhale it a little bit. Yeah. And then his stock plummets.
That was one of the best moments of 2018.
Oh, man. That
was one of the best moments.
I loved it. So right now, you're only doing... okay, let me rephrase that. Everything in your world and atmosphere is surrounding your podcast.
I've got a couple other little like side projects that I'm like working on with some other people, but like
the haven't launched yet, or
one of them is like kind of soft launch, but we're like it's my friend's YouTube channel, and I'm just like really helping him out with it and like basically doing kind of like the creative side of it.
Nice.
And it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess what I'm getting at is everyone in today's time wants to do a podcast. Like,
it seems like
it's like the hot thing to do right now. Everyone's jumping on it. But what people aren't really figuring out is how to make money, how to make it their full time. So if you're open to being completely
I'll
open,
be completely
like
transparent. Sorry, was that your question? Like how do you make money doing the podcast?
Well, yeah, like how are you able to sustain kind of this like entrepreneur lifestyle through podcasting, through creating
how do I
gifts?
travel so much?
How do you travel so much?
Well, number one, I save a lot of money. Like I don't go out drinking. I don't spend a lot of money on stuff that I don't actually want. Like for example, I spend very little on clothes. I have my staples, stuff that I spend my money on, and then I'm not going to the mall every weekend when I get my paycheck or whatever. I don't go out drinking that much. Maybe here and there if my friends are come on, maybe But so that's number one, save your money. But also with the podcast, so I initially wanted to.
Well, hold on, let me just set this up. Yeah. You have 5,000 as of now. It's November 8th or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You have 5,000 downloads a month or per episode?
It's like around there. And actually it's kind of interesting. So like over the past few months, I think just because I was uploading less episodes, it's kind of like dipped a little more, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, like when I was like a few months ago, it was really hitting about like 5,000, and I'm kind of gearing up to like ramp things back up with my new studio. So that's why it's kind of like dipped a little bit right now.
Yeah. But chairs look amazing, by the way.
Thanks. Yeah. The chairs are, I'm super stoked on it. I'm like so excited. So one of the things that happened was one of my friends, she reached out to me and was like, hey, how do I be a sponsor on your podcast? And I'm like, you pay me and I read an ad. Like that's pretty much what we did. And to be honest, like she'll even attest to this. Like I just don't think it was a good fit for my audience. She's a real estate agent. It just, it was a
Wait, you said that it wasn't a good fit?
No. Like we actually ended up following through, and she was paying some like an ad provider on my podcast for like 10 or 12 episodes or so. And so I was making some income through that. It was awesome, but she didn't get very many leads from it. It didn't seem like it was a good audience fit. To be completely frank, like I kind of knew it was going to be kind of a hard audience. It was, again, she was a real estate agent. It just didn't seem like a super great fit, but I felt that we could be really creative with the ads, which we were. Yeah. So the way that we kind of made it a non-ad was I basically almost had her on as like a mini guest every time and would answer a quick real estate question to add value.
That's great.
So instead of just being like, blah, 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 she's a real estate agent, blah, blah, blah. Like it was like, this episode's been sponsored by Brooke, and she's a real estate agent. Brooke, tell me about a time when blah, 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 blah. And she would actually add some value. I'm like, thanks, Brooke. If you want to find out more, blah, blah, blah. So that was kind of how I did the ads. And I was actually people were really receptive of it. People actually commented a lot like, hey, I really liked your ads. And I'm like, but did you, use her? No. You know what I mean? Because it just didn't, again, it is a hard fit.
Well, if I'm being honest, it seems like 10 to 12 episodes is nowhere near enough to run.
And I told her that. And again, not to blame her or anything. It was also like, she was realizing that her budget she felt like her advertising and marketing budget was a little bit better spent other places. But I totally agree. Like, for example, not to give a free plug or anything, but MeUndies, like is a podcast sponsor on tons of podcasts. And first time I heard it, I was like, that's funny. And then like I heard it more and more and more, and how soft they were and all this stuff. And then by the time it came for me to buy some underwear, I was like, well, I should try out MeUndies. You know what I mean? And it sold me. Yeah. And I wore them. I still wear them. I'm wearing them right now. And that's kind of how
I'm wearing them right now too.
Literally, like it sold me, and they're really comfortable and they're good. And so that's the thing is like when you kind of that's the cool thing about podcasts is you actually get to almost kind of control someone's thoughts for a little while and not in a malicious way. Like advertising and marketing and, you know, all that content creation, whatever, you are kind of trying to like shift people's mindset a little bit. But if you're doing it for the positive, if you're selling a really good product, whatever, like people are going to buy underwear anyway. It's not like you're doing something malicious by trying to convince these poor podcast listeners to buy your underwear or to convince someone to be your real estate agent. She's actually providing value. She's like actually, want to put people in an awesome house. But it was just the problem was, it was like the budget wasn't there and it, audience fit. It didn't seem like it just didn't seem right. So we kind of nixed it after like 10 or 12 episodes. But anyway, so to go back to the monetization, I want to always be completely transparent, and I never wanted to like charge people to be on my podcast. That was like one thing where some people were like, you should just like, you're giving people so much free publicity for being on the podcast.
That would never work. That model in podcasting would never work.
Yeah. And they're like, you should like charge people, and I've actually heard, Entrepreneurs on Fire. This is some hot tea right now. Entrepreneurs on Fire. John Lee Dumas is one of the biggest podcasts. He charges like a couple grand to be on his podcast.
Really?
He does a podcast every single day.
But is it like really high profile guests then? They got to be making
pretty good.
To pay that.
And he has like a solid, he has a solid listenership. He's like constantly at the top of like business, whatever.
Then
maybe a little bit,
it is working.
He didn't start off like that. It's not like he started off saying, "Hey, you want to be on my podcast for $2,000?" Like he built it up, and he actually does a podcast every day.
Yeah, I mean,
I actually don't like his podcast. Like I'm not trying to give him an endorsement.
Yeah,
I'm just saying like that's how he does it.
Yeah.
And the audience is there. It's almost like doing a giant ad. You know what I mean? It's like for example, I listen to the Joe Rogan Elon Musk podcast again. Next time I buy a car, I might be more inclined to buy a Tesla because I like Elon Musk.
Yeah.
That wasn't an ad for Tesla, but kind of was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so people are kind of like, you should charge people to be on your podcast. And I never want to do that. But what I've started to do is when people want to be a guest on the podcast, of course, we're doing it for free. We're doing it for fun, all that kind of stuff. But if some people, have been a little higher profile and I've invested a lot of time into the promo and the visuals and making cool graphics and maybe making custom GIFs or, all that kind of stuff. And some of the guests, I'm like, maybe their audience isn't that big. It's a really good podcast, but like, I'm not going to invest tons of time and effort and energy into making these video promos and all that stuff. Cause I just don't think it's going to like the payoff's not going to be as there.
Yeah.
I'd rather invest that time into a really, really good episode that, whatever. Yeah. Not to say that any of my guests have been boring or anything, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what I've actually started to do is, asking people like, hey, I'm probably going to make a little bit of content for it. I'm going to promote a little bit, but do you want to invest in creation of some extra promo and actually invest in creating some additional stuff? And maybe, I can create some stuff on your end that maybe not even related to the podcast, but maybe we can work together on, some other project, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I've like started monetizing it in kind of a different way.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't think about that. And it was kind of weird to me at first. My friend suggested it to me and I'm like, I don't want to like charge people for promo. But then I realized like there were some episodes that I wasn't going as hard and maybe they want me to go as hard and maybe they would invest for me to go that hard on the promo. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But it's easy in your shoes to feel resentment for that. If you're putting in all this work into like creating micro content, like I've created 5 to 6 pieces of micro content for each episode. And this is like less than 60-second pieces. It's all subtitled and all that. And I'll send it out to my podcast guest.
And they don't even post it.
And like most of them don't post. I would say over half of them have posted, some of the micro content. But it's like those 2 or 3 or 4 that don't post anything. I'm like, I just did all this work and all this time. And like back then I was paying someone to do it. And now I'm like, all right, in order for me to like really sustain this and like really dive into it, and make it make sense for me personally, I'm like, I just need to do the work. I'm gonna do it all. Like, don't get me wrong. I can hire someone, I can pay someone to do it and all that. But it's like, what? Then where's the benefit for me in doing the podcast? When we're sitting here talking, like I'm listening, but I listen in a totally different type of way when I get in the editing room and listen.
Totally true.
It's so weird. So if you're gonna do a podcast, I would like implore anyone to edit it themselves, do all the work themselves and all that, and not resent the guest that doesn't share it, that doesn't talk about it and all that, because either way, it's practice for you.
The other thing is like, one thing that I'm trying to focus on now too is having that conversation with those people like up front and say like, cause maybe, for example, you go on my Instagram page, the whole thing is very like color all the photos are edited with kind of this like orangish, greenish filter on the photos. And maybe someone is like really stingy about their Instagram grid and they don't want an orange and greenish photo. So when I share that promo with them, they're like, this doesn't really match the aesthetic of my feed. Yeah. So I'm not going to post it. You know what I mean? And there's people like that. I think that's where stories play a good,
I was about to say that. Yep.
Sharing story content is way easier. And also graphics, I've realized like just don't really work that great on Instagram sometimes, like words and stuff. People want to see like really compelling photos or whatever. Maybe the words are better used elsewhere, whatever. But anyways, I think having a conversation with the guests, like, hey, so if we were going to put out some promo content, you were going to share it, like, what kind of stuff would you want to share? Would you want to share a video from it? Would you want to share, so then I'm not wasting time, like making a bunch of stuff that they're not even going to end up sharing. Because especially if like they have a really big audience, I'm like, oh, I'm going to make all this epic stuff. And then they don't share it. It's like, what the fuck? What are they spending all this time and effort on this for? You know what I mean?
And it's like your podcast has so many different guests and people with so many different backgrounds that it's easier for you to post that picture on your news feed.
Yeah.
But like, so for instance, I did a video with Fashion and Fried. They're a donut company. They were doing like all these donut shops. And I sent them the promo picture for them to put up. And they put it up. And I was like, oh, good. This is awesome. They got like 10,000 whatever followers on Instagram. They put it up. And then I went and I looked at it and I was like, even me, I was like, this just doesn't fit in there. Like it was all pictures of their donuts. And then it's like this random picture with like my branding and all that. I'm like, like I really appreciate them putting it up. Don't get me wrong. But I'm like, it was like the first time to where I was like, if I was in their shoes, I would probably be like,
you got to put some strategy and some thought into that kind of stuff. Yeah. And that's actually, so in a couple weeks, I'm doing a podcast with this like really big DJ.
Nice.
And I'm like super stoked. And he actually requests, like we were talking, like I slid in his DMs to like answer this question. And he responded back. I was like so stoked. And then we were, he's like, oh, cool. What's your podcast about? And then he asked to be on the podcast. He's like, hey, I'm coming through Atlanta. Could I ever be a guest on the podcast? I'm like, bro, I was about to pitch you. Like I was about to ask you. So I'm like super stoked on it. But one of his, so he's a DJ, right? And his like little DJ show that he puts out, like his mix, it's called The Barbershop. Okay. He has a big long beard, a little bit longer than yours.
Yeah, keep
not that it's a contest, not that it's a contest or anything. It's called The Barbershop. And so when he comes over, I already have this idea of we're going to do like a fake like barbershop photo shoot to like promote it. So like, it's like a collab between me and him and thinking about it in that perspective and like, oh, I'm going to integrate his brand of the barbershop. So he will be inclined to post about it. And then also it like adds some variety to my stuff and makes it kind of cool and different. People are like, what is this barbershop thing? Oh, this is cool. Yeah. Like, making it look like I'm about to like cut his beard or something. Cause also on Instagram, crazy content, weird content goes so viral. Yeah. If you post some kind of like crazy fucked up thing, like of someone's head or like, someone's making a weird face, that's going to get a lot more attention. Yeah. So if I have like this crazy, like giant scissors and I'm about to cut off this guy's giant beard or whatever we end up doing, like that's going to like, people are going to be like, who's this guy? Why is he cutting off Will Clark's beard? So like, thinking about it in that perspective of, okay, you're trying to do promo for your podcast. And of course you want it to fit with your branding, but almost more importantly, especially if you're a new podcast, you want your guests to share that stuff, especially if they're high profile. I mean, hopefully you're having interesting people on that, already have some sort of audience.
Yeah. And I was going to say like none of this that you're talking about is like necessarily leading to revenue.
No,
but it's all
branding,
and the long-term game of it.
I did a podcast with my friend Ryan and I talked about what I call the 3 R's of podcasting. Or the 3 L's, sorry. I don't even know my own thing. But the 3 L's of podcasting. One is longevity. So you got to like have the appearance, or at least like for me, I have 100 episodes. So people come in, they're like, oh, this show's been around.
Yeah.
This show is going to be around. I'm going to invest in this because this is going to be around. I can listen to this on my commute or whatever, or at least have the appearance of longevity. So like being really professional. The other one is listenability. So if your audio quality sucks, and or you're just boring, like that's obviously a big thing. And then the other one, the 3 L's: longevity, listenability, and it was related to promo. I can't even think of it, but I was like cutesy because I thought of the L's. But it was like basically you got to have good promo. I'll think of the other L later.
Yeah,
the 3 L's, but there's only 2. But it was basically related to promo and stuff, and making it have like a clean like aesthetic and making it getting your message out there because.
I'm
iTunes,
like trying to think of L words now.
Right, yeah, I can't think of it. Yeah. But it was a stretch anyways. But on iTunes, like you're not going to be discovered if you're new. Like it's really hard for people to just find your podcast.
Yeah.
So when people do find you on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, you got to have that like really like clean appearance where people are like, oh shit, this show's got their stuff together. Whereas if you just look like some guy with an iPhone, they're like, why would I listen to this show when I could listen to Tim Ferriss or Joe Rogan or Gary Vaynerchuk's podcast or whatever? You know, they've got all these other literally thousands, millions of other podcasts they could be listening to. Why would they choose yours?
Well, it's like even Gary V's, I'll pull up his podcast sometimes on iTunes and I'll turn it off after 7 minutes because I'm like, the audio is just so bad.
Yeah.
And like he's just pulling audio from his rant
or whatever,
on the streets of New York. And like watching it, and I come from this world, right? So watching it, if I can see the cars, it's almost like those horns and the tires screeching and all that is like, I'm like, okay, it makes sense because I can actually see it. But when it comes to just listening to it in my car, when I'm not actually seeing stuff, is so annoying.
Yeah,
but and I know
I'm with you, man.
I know a lot of people in Atlanta that have really good podcasts when it comes to content, and they're doing a ton of episodes. But they don't seem interested in upgrading their equipment, so upgrading their quality, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's something important to say is that it's okay to start with not the best mic or not the best location or whatever. It's okay to start there, but I've had some guys like, you know, if the content is good enough, then it doesn't matter what it sounds like. I'm like, yeah, but it does.
It does. And also it's sometimes not even about the quality of the equipment. Like, you know, this goes with video as well. Like it's not even maybe about the quality of your camera. If you've got shitty lighting and the shot isn't composed properly, it looks bad.
Yeah.
Even if you're shooting on a $10,000 camera, it looks bad.
Yep.
If you're recording on a $10,000 microphone, but you're recording in a parking lot and there's car noises and you've got tons of white noise in the background and your audio is not balanced properly and it's really quiet, you know, it doesn't matter that you're recording on a $10,000 microphone. So not only like there's always that threshold of diminishing returns, especially when it comes to gear. So like buying what you need and buying what you like aspire to buy or whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, also setting up the proper time and care to like make it as good as you can possibly get it. I think that's where a lot of people fall short.
Yeah.
Is like, oh, I'll record this in my car that's on and I have like the AC noise and the engine noise and stuff. It's like, you've also got to like set up the proper environment and stuff. So.
Well, it's funny because we were talking before we started recording about like my intro video to this podcast. And I was like, we're going to set on back of my car and all that. And I did like 4 episodes like that. And I was like, no, this is not going to work. Because one of the episodes we did was right by train tracks and we had to stop. And we edited around it. Like I have an editor and all that stuff. So like it was easy to cut around it and the audio still be clean. But I'm like, this is just not, it was too much like work. And like the whole idea behind this podcast is to make it just a conversation. Let's just sit down, talk and all that stuff. So like when we moved into the space a few months ago, I'm like, I'm going to have a podcast set.
Yeah.
That, I mean, I can still move all of this and shoot on these black walls for clients and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it was like, I just had to go to a space that was sustainable for me. And also I felt good about the quality. I mean, we did one episode. We had, who was that, Ray? The Synapse, Drink Synapse. Prime, was that their co-working space? Prime, I think.
Prime.
Oh, it was like a co-working space and they're recording out of there?
Yeah, I think it was Prime. It's like out of somewhere north of here. But anyway, it was like this big community space where they do a lot of events. Yeah. And their office was like way too cramped and small. There's no way we could do it. And we showed up and they're like, yeah, let's do it in here. And it's this big open, like imagine like a high school cafeteria, right?
Yeah.
And I only had 2 boom mics at the time, one getting me and like one of the guests and the other one getting 2 of the other guests. And like trying to get the audio to sound good in that episode. I literally was like, I'm over it. I'm done. I'm buying mics. I'm buying these Rode Procaster mics.
Yeah.
I'm not sponsored by the Rode, but I was like, I'm buying these mics. I'm going to do the audio legit.
Yeah.
And then from that point on, I was like, when we move into a new space, because our lease was almost up at our old space.
Yeah.
I was like, when we move into a new space, I'm going to make it how I want to make it. And even still, I'm like, we need more stuff. I can light better, but this feels so much more real to me versus like being in those spaces.
Yeah.
I was like, just because I do video production, like the whole conversation, I'm like, this is bad. This is terrible.
I can kind of tell too, I watched some of your videos. I'm like, dang, like this guy knows what he's doing when it comes to video for sure. Like he's on top of it.
And then I'll watch all those old videos. I'm like, God, I could do these so much better.
Yeah, I know. And like, obviously there's always room for improvement and stuff, but coming from someone who's like maybe just filming it on their iPhone or whatever, and then trying to post like micro content from that, like I could tell that actual effort and care was going into, you had multi angles, you had like a lighting setup. I think in one of the videos you did kind of show like a zoomed out, like behind the scenes kind of view of it. I'm like, oh shit, I got a lot of equipment. You know what I mean? And like, I think that's where a lot of people, even if there is room for improvement or you could do it better, like that, like not illusion, but you get that appearance of like, oh shit, they've got like a big thing going on. Even again, like this setup, you've got this like corner dedicated to the podcast. People watch it, they're like, oh shit, like this guy does this a lot. Like this guy's really serious. He's put a lot of time and effort into like buying equipment and having stuff in the background and all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do now with my studio is in the beginning, I think bootstrapping it and doing it in all kinds of different places. Cause actually I recorded most of them all like on site in other places. Like I never recorded them like in my own space. Like I didn't have a real like good space to do it besides like my house, and that was weird asking people to come up. So, sometimes it's actually kind of cool because I was able to say like, hey, this guy that I really respect a lot, let's do a podcast and I can come over and we can kind of hang out. And like now we're like better friends because of that, or whatever. But now I think it's time to graduate.
So when will your studio be like up and ready?
So I'm, like I said, I'm recording with that big DJ on Black Friday. So it's the day after Thanksgiving. And like the goal is to have like 95% of the studio like done by then. And actually I just came from a meeting where we were making this like laser engraved, like really cool sign.
Nice.
It's going to be in the background of the set. Like, so, and we've got like this cool, like, almost like vinyl wrapped like wall that's got like some cool designs on and stuff like that. That's going to be in the background. So it's going to be sweet. I'm super excited.
That's the idea for this set is like, I want to hang the Late Night Startup logo like in the middle and all that. It's just,
that would be sweet.
We've spent so much money building out the space. I'm like, all right, baby steps. Let's slow down a little bit. Baby steps. But it's like, I just want to reiterate, it's one of those things like anyone can start. It's okay to start with the crappier mic and like just recording it through your computer speaker and all that. But
it's also,
I just can't stand when people use it as an excuse of like, oh, like I don't need this fancy stuff.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
You have to upgrade the quality as you grow.
I'm with you, man. And I agree. Like there's like that bell curve of diminishing returns. Like, yes, maybe your pilot episode or the first few, you can maybe get away with recording it on your iPhone, but sometime or another, you need to invest $100, $200, $300 into some sort of like semi-professional-ish audio setup. And you can say professional, however, whatever scale of professional we're talking about here. But, even just buying some actual microphones, buying, I did it with, I wanted my setup to be as portable as possible. That was my goal because I knew it was going to be audio only for the beginning.
Yeah.
So, and my buddy Graham that I talked about, he had like a whole giant thing full of stuff to podcast with. And I'm like, I do not want to be lugging around cardboard boxes full of crap. Yeah. So I was like, I want lav mics that are going to be really small. I clip them to, my guest shirt, super small, packs up super tiny. I can fit all my equipment in a tiny backpack, super clean, super easy. Now I'm graduating. I've got to upgrade from that setup. I got to get out of my portable setup now that I'm moving into my studio. But, at least, from the get-go, people are like, dang, your audio quality sounds really good. Like, what are you recording on? I'm like, I got this thing. It's a couple $100, but it's worth it. It's worth it to invest.
But you still have all the portable equipment, right? Because I mean, you post kind of frequently about, hey, I'm going to this state or this country. Like, is there anyone I should talk to? So you have it all kind of packed up to where as you're traveling, you can record there too.
Totally. And also like it's actually kind of fun to like record in different places and even recording like the intros and outros.
Yeah.
I like doing that where I'm like, this podcast was recorded in Atlanta, but right now I'm in blah, blah, blah. So hope you like it or whatever. And that just kind of like, leads to the, whatever. It's cool to be like, I'm in all these different places, whatever.
So how much of your traveling is for pleasure and for like your own
that's a good question.
Self-fulfillment, which isn't always pleasure.
No,
right?
That's true.
But also just like for work to record different episodes. And all that.
I've never like gone somewhere like, well, I take that back. I have traveled for like a specific podcast, but it's always been like, I'm probably going to be here. Let's try to work a podcast into it. You know what I mean? So like, for example, my friends were going on a trip to the Grand Canyon and they're going to hike the Grand Canyon. And I got invited. I'm like, of course, like that sounds super fun. But then my gears start turning. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be out in Las Vegas. So I might as well go visit my friend Haley in Arizona before that. So I went to Arizona before that. And then I'm like, and then afterwards I can go visit my friends in LA. So then like after the Grand Canyon, you know, so it like evolved into like this trip. And, you know, so, and then I'm like, okay, cool. In Las Vegas, I'm going to end up recording with this lady. And I did, you know, so it ends up being like a mixture. You know, I haven't ever been like, oh, I know this really cool person in Arizona, so I'm going to fly out there specifically for that yet. I think eventually I, you know, that was actually one of my main goals of the podcast was I wanted it to be like an excuse to travel more. But yeah, a lot of it is kind of like pleasure. And then I kind of work the podcast into it. So.
Yeah, totally. So are you hoping that the podcast is like your full-time job income, or are you always going to do these kind of like side creative projects?
I think the side creative projects are fun just because I know myself and I know that I'm always going to be exploring other weird little things.
Yeah.
I think once the podcast is more, again, like the studio especially is like a big kind of stepping stone. I think, it's going to turn into a lot more of like a bigger part of it. And I think you know, I'd love for it to be my full-time gig, you know, and I don't see why it couldn't be, but I love talking to people, you know, like doing the actual podcast, the actual work of it, you know, I love it. I love talking to people. I love meeting people, you know, and it's fun for me. So I don't see why I wouldn't want to continue doing it forever, you know?
So you're kind of known for saying that a lot of podcast advice that people get sucks. Why do you...
Podcast advice that they get sucks? Yeah, I think it sucks because people are focused kind of on the, like, everyone's going to give you advice within their framework of what a podcast is. That's like telling someone what a song, what their music should be like. You know what I mean? It's like, like if I'm an electronic musician, I'm trying to tell a jazz musician how to do his songs. Like that's stupid.
Yeah.
And like, you know, like that doesn't even make sense. You'd obviously realize why that doesn't make sense. But in the podcasting world, everyone just thinks podcast is one thing. I don't know if you've ever seen the meme. It's like people say, you know, it's a certain thing in like music. You say like EDM, like there's one person that points to it and says EDM, and the other person is like a, you know, person that loves EDM, and they're looking at all these things like house, dubstep, techno, you know, deep house, you know, they've got all these subgenres, and they realize like some person's just looking at those like, oh, that's electronic dance music. And then this other person's like, no, that's specifically this or whatever. Yeah. And so I think that a lot of people are giving podcasting advice within their framework of what they think a podcast should be. For my show, it's very loose, very conversational, very much like this, you know? And so I don't really like, you know, I don't mind if I have a in there or a stutter or whatever, because it makes it feel more real.
Yeah.
But if I'm doing a news show and it's a daily news show where I'm trying to get straight to the news, you know, it's 15 minutes long, it's very specific, very tight, very informative, I'm going to cut out anything unnecessary because I respect the viewer's time and all that. But, you know, with my show, I think it's actually kind of more disrespectful to cut out stuff because I think my listeners want to have that kind of almost like relationship with me and the guests. And I think that keeping some of that stuff in, maybe the payoff isn't exactly there always with it, but the intent is there that it's honest and truthful and like raw. And I think if that's your main goal, then it's fine to like leave it a little bit more raw or whatever. Yeah. And I think, again, it's kind of like telling a musician, like the word podcast literally doesn't mean anything. Like the actual word podcast, it's an audio file. Some people will talk about a podcast. It's literally like a music show and they just play like a mix. They're like, yeah, this is my podcast. This is my DJ mix. Yeah. It's like, that's not a podcast, but it is. Like, why isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's like saying something isn't a song or something isn't a book. It's like a book can be 10 pages long, or a book can be a Harry Potter novel, or a book can be the Bible. You know, like a book can be anything. So who are you to tell me what what my book should be like? You know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Gotcha. No, that all makes sense. Yeah. But I feel like the technical side of things and how to like grow a podcast, there's a lot of similarities regardless of the type of podcast.
Definitely.
You know what is kind of shocking to me is how popular these like investigative discovery type of podcasts are. Which I just can't get into them.
It's kind of like, you know, the crime shows like NCIS or something like that. Like it's
people
like that, but
shit.
You can get into it. Yeah. I'm not into them either, but
yeah, I'd rather listen to like just random conversations.
Me too.
And all that. But anyway, so where can people find you?
Yeah.
Let's link it up. And what's your main piece of it? I don't want to say advice, but what's one thing that you want to leave people with?
Yeah.
It can be anything.
I'm going to start with piece of advice because I think right now tensions are really high in the world. Like, you know, especially in your own bubble. Like you can look, I'm assuming most of the people listening to this are living in the United States. Probably a lot of them are living in Atlanta. You hear and see all this stuff on the news about racism and terrorism and all this stuff. But like right now in history is like one of the best times on earth by statistics for anybody to live in. Right. And I think that being open to different perspectives is one of the most powerful things you can do. Like that's what one of my biggest goals with my podcast is to hopefully shift people's perspectives into thinking about something in a new way, or thinking a different idea, or having a new perspective again, because that's how we get to form relationships with people, and that's how we understand each other. That's how we have empathy in this world, right? And that's the only way we're gonna destroy evil. You know what I mean? Like if you're mad at me for some reason and I'm mad at you for some reason, it's probably just a misunderstanding. Like, you know,
have a conversation.
If I'm talking to you about politics, we might disagree on a bunch of things, but we just sat together for the past, hour or whatever and had a great conversation, and it never came up. And I think you're a decent human being and you think I'm a decent human being and I don't hate your guts.
Yeah.
But when you start to shift into this other, like me against him, her against, all that kind of stuff, that's when we break apart, and that's when we like split apart as a society. And I think there's too much like emphasis on that right now, especially in the media. So my piece of advice is keep your eyes open and be empathetic towards people, because, I think that's the only way where you can grow as a human and, all that. But where you can find me, I have pretty good SEO as long as you can spell my name correctly. If you search my name, Andrew Deitsch, on Google, on the Google machine, you can find all my links to everything. But my website is andrewdeitsch.com. And you can find my podcast there. You can listen on anywhere you're listening to this podcast right now. You can listen to mine, I'm sure. So
awesome, man.
Unless you're on like some obscure, weird proprietary listening service that I don't know about.
Well, which you will soon probably know about and be on there. Yeah,
there we go.
And just search his name as well if you want to gif up your Instagram stories.
And actually, I just made so my Instagram is at AD Podcast. That's where I like post like primarily most of my cool content and blah blah blah. So if you're an Instagrammer, definitely follow me there. But I just made a new Instagram just for gifts, like so showcasing all the gifts that I've created. It's just called @CustomGifts.
Okay,
I have that username.
Awesome.
So @CustomGifts.
I'm gonna get on there and follow that right now.
It's not that full right now, but hopefully by the time you listen to this, it'll be a little more jam packed with some cool gifts.
Man, I absolutely love how you like. It sounds like just everything that you've done is just doing. Like you just started. Like you just were like, yeah, this seems cool. I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna learn this. And then now it's becoming more of like a business. But it doesn't sound like how you're executing or what you started to do was ever like, I want to start a business. I'm going to make this a business. It's more like, I'm Andrew and I'm going to do what Andrew wants to do.
I believe wholeheartedly in the Tarzan Method. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not. Wait, one second. What's it called?
@CustomGifts is my Instagram.
Okay, got it. Yeah. The Tarzan Method.
Yeah. And it's a little picture of a sriracha bottle. That's my profile picture.
Shit, I love it. All right, there we go.
Because they got some spicy gifts in there.
I love it.
It's pretty funny. But anyways, so the Tarzan Method is basically this methodology, this way of thinking that, you're Tarzan, you're trying to get to the other side of the jungle. You don't have an exact map of all the vines that you're going to grab onto to get to that other side. You're going to just grab the best looking vine. And then from that next vine, you're either going to grab the next vine or you're swinging back. You know what I mean? So like you've got to constantly be, you're grabbing onto that best vine, but then you're trying to get to there, whatever there is. And for me, like there is like financial freedom. There is being happy and fulfilled and satisfied with what I'm doing. And so to me, it doesn't like, I don't set a goal of like, I'm going to set out to be this guy because I think that's what's going to make me happy. I'm just always like focused on what's the opportunity in front of me. Maybe there isn't any opportunity. So I got to make my own opportunity or whatever it ends up being. But like the Tarzan Method is, Tarzan is not going to go straight across the jungle. He's going to zigzag, maybe even go back a little bit. But he's always going to get to the other side because he's always going to grab that best looking vine or whatever. You know what I mean? So that I definitely believe in that. And I think people should be more open to that.
Yeah. So I just read like this whole article. I'm sure you know who Mac Miller was. I think I've mentioned him in every podcast episode since his passing. But I read this whole article this guy wrote about the importance of swimming, which was Mac Miller's last album. And I thought it was super powerful. And you saying the Tarzan Method made me kind of think of this. It's like if the concept of swimming, or at least swimming in the ocean, is so powerful because as long as you're swimming one way or the other, you're getting closer to land, closer to what you're envisioning, closer to like your goals, right?
Yeah.
No matter which way you're swimming. The waves and the storms and the sharks in the water, all that's just natural. That's the universe, right? That's the natural habitat with the animals in the water. Like, so no matter what shit comes your way and what heartache and like obstacles and hurdles and all that stuff, see those as the waves. Those naturally happen. But as long as you just keep swimming and don't just tread water and sit there and try to float, you're eventually going to drown if you do that. But just keep swimming past all of that stuff through the storms, and you're eventually going to reach your goal.
Love that.
I just did, Matt Davis, right? Matt B. Davis.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I just did
OCR Media and the Atlanta Podcast. Shout out
right?
Matt B. Davis.
I just did an episode with him,
nice.
Which was funny because one of the guys he was supposed to have on had to bail at the last minute. He was like, "You want to be on it?" I was like, "Sure." And I'm super
awesome.
introverted, so like I have to get in a really like not crazy mindset, but like it takes me at least 10 minutes to like switch my mind and be like, all right, time to be on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm so introverted. But shit, where was I going with this? Oh, so I was on his podcast and he said, well, did you envision having this studio and this space and all of this gear? Like, because I started doing this when I was in high school, right?
Yeah.
He was like, was this ever your vision? I was like, you know what? It's probably the first time I've ever been really asked that. I was like, I didn't envision any of this, in like the cameras, the studio, but I always envisioned the freedom to say no and the freedom to do what I wanted to do. And having all of this is just kind of a byproduct of me sticking to that vision and following my gut. So I guess where I was getting with that is it's easy to kind of get distracted as you're swinging on these vines and stuff, to get distracted by like, oh, that tree is more green. It's shiny, it's the sun shining on it, and all that, which, sometimes it's better to go through it than around it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And also the grass is always greener where you water it, It's like grass could be greener over there, but you abandon what you're currently doing. Like, you got to know when to stick around and you got to know when to go. Like I've never been a quitter, but I do recognize the time when it's time to leave. You know what I mean? Like with college.
When to pivot.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I have a very hard time like quitting things because I want to commit. You know what I mean? And that's a good thing and a bad thing.
You seem obsessive.
Yeah, a little bit
things.
Obsessive.
I'm the same way.
Yeah, I can get obsessive for sure. And that's why I don't play video games, because I would waste all my time. I don't watch Netflix either. Like I don't get sucked into TV shows because I know how I am. I like TV shows too much.
if there's like one documentary or docuseries, like I'll watch it if it's like if it's good within the first episode. But even like video games, I'm the same way. I started playing PUBG Mobile a lot with some of my friends. And like one night I was like, all right, I'm done. I like deleted it off my phone. Like, this is taking up way too much of my time.
Yeah.
And all that. But anyway, I thought it was interesting because when I said my response to Matt, I was like, it was the first time I really thought about it. Like having this space and this studio and all this gear was never a dream of mine. But the dream was always to have the freedom to say
like
no.
That high school you would be like proud as fuck to see where you are now.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Totally.
And I always think about that too. Like, make the high school version of you super proud of who you've become, physically, mentally, job wise, career, all that kind of happiness wise. Like always think about that, and that should probably be the way that you want to go,
Yeah. Well, man, this has been one of the longer podcasts. I may actually split it into 2 episodes.
Hey, there we go.
I don't know. Maybe that's a way to get
it.
Yeah, maybe that's a way to get multiple episodes out of this. But I really appreciate you being here, man. I hope one day to be on your podcast. If you're up for it, I would love to sit down and talk.
Once the studio's done, let's do it, man.
Yeah, man.
I've been kind of like slowing my roll on asking people to be on it, because I'm like, once I get that studio, I want to like crush it.
Dude,
so
I was there like 2 months ago. I was like, I'm not asking anyone anything. Even my wife, who has the login to like our Instagram, she was like, well, I'm DMing these people, and I'm like, I'm not responding. Like, I'm not ready yet. Stop DMing
stop
people. But I also love how like slide into the DMs went from being this whole like sexual, I'm horny, I'm gonna slide into your DMs thing to now it's just like,
no, it's
this is B2B marketing, and I'm gonna totally slide in your DMs.
Slide in the DMs, bro. I love
crazy.
it.
But anyway, man, I really appreciate it. This was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.